would agree. Not to jump too much, but you mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier, and Peterson, I'd love to actually lock horns with him, but he's going up with Zizek. Maybe somebody will send this to him, and he'll decide to talk with us. One of the things that's honestly like amazed me is, in the years since I became a Buddhist, I discovered Alan Watts, who like died in the 70s, unfortunately. But I've been listening to a lot of his old lectures, and it really strikes me as just what an empty shirt Peterson is. Like, he does have, I've read parts of 12 Rules for Life, and some of them are really good ideas, like, stand up straight with your shoulders back. That was taught to me by my old martial arts master. Stand up straight, be proud of who you are. Right. And there's a lot of people that kind of need to hear that self-help stuff. But then when he goes into, like, these, former Nazi conspiracy theories with the cultural Marxism line, and some of the other stuff that he said has been like, it's just weird. It's just really weird. And like, I feel like he just got a bunch of money because he was mean to some trans people and people were angry that trans people exist.
Well, I look at it a little bit, the way I see it, first of all, if you watch his non-political stuff, I feel like he's particularly speaking to young men who have no self-esteem. And in the financial crisis that we're at, right? And there's a lot of young men who are in this low-wage economy, right? I mean, they're supposed to go out and become the breadwinner. They're supposed to go out and become the patriarchal father figure leading the household, and their ability to do that has been taken away. And they're getting judgment from it from their parents. Their parents are saying, you're a loser, get your life together, and that destroys their self-esteem. And so Jordan Peterson is this, like, father-like figure who comes along, and a lot of what he does is just kind of give voice to how they're feeling.
Which is important. People need to feel
and they hear him saying how they're feeling, right? And they feel like, this man understands me, this man's listening to me. I just saw a heartbreaking video from when he was speaking at Liberty University, and this young man runs onto the stage. Have you seen that clip?
No, I haven't seen anybody run. Oh, he runs on and, like, hugs him?
He tries to, like, approach him, and he's like, I need help, and he's, like, sobbing, and then, and the security, of course, pulls him away.
I think I did see this.
It's tragic, but, we are in an epidemic of mental health, society-wise. I mean, the amount of people that are on psych meds now is massive. I'm on psych meds. and it's a big society-wide problem, right? And you talk about the mass shootings and all of this, and so he's speaking to young men, and he's giving them this fatherly, affectionate voice, saying, his voice
is very affectionate.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed is his voice is a big part of what he does. It has to be, because, for example, like, he, if he didn't, if he said half the things he says about politics with a gruff voice, with an angry voice, people would be scared of him. Yeah. But he says it with this, I'm not a Canadian, I'm just a nice, and so it doesn't sound scary, right? And that's a very important part of what he does. But, his understanding of politics is super shallow. I mean, he's a psychologist. He understands psychology quite well, but when it comes to politics, I mean, I think he's read Solzhenitsyn. And I think he's read, he always quotes this Nazi psychology book, Ordinary Men. And now, on that basis, and he's a conservative. He's a cultural conservative. He's just your typical, attend church every Sunday, abortion is not right, and be a responsible person, and don't, it's just your typical small-town doctor, lawyer, you know what I mean? Be upright, follow the rules. It's your typical conservatism.
Yeah, for the John Birch people.
Right. But it's, but in a way, though, and you say that he got a lot of money because of the trans people. Part of me thinks, though, that actually, because the demographic he's aiming for with that, young white man who's a disappointment and feels like the world is falling apart.
Yeah. Feels like he's a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, those are people.
If you're one of those people, I don't think you're a disappointment.
I don't either. But it's because of the circumstances, right? But of course, you're not going to get that from defenders of the system because, But I feel like, more than anything, there's an understanding among the establishment that those kind of people are becoming alt-right. And alt-right in Charlottesville, that's much more dangerous. And Jordan Peterson, he hates feminism, he hates, transgender, he shares this grievance that the men are the victims and women are, he gives them the politics that they feel, but then he tells them to clean their room. Yeah. He doesn't tell them to go join the neo-Nazi group and shoot up a school. You know what I'm saying?
Which is better.
And that might be why some forces in the establishment are supporting him. They're saying there's this demographic that's potentially quite dangerous. We've got somebody here who can kind of bring them in from the cold, tell them what they want to hear, speak to their concerns, and if he was a far leftist, they wouldn't listen to him.
Yeah.
That's one theory I've had about Peterson. And the other thing is that, it may simply be that just a lot of people want to hear his message. I will say that it's a little... I
have liked when he's talked about, like, Jung. I have liked those lectures.
One thing that I will say that is particularly disturbing is that there's a couple times where he'll start going off on rants about, like, it sounds like eugenics to me.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like he's an advocate of eugenics. He never comes out and says it, but there are things he says...
Enforced monogamy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That almost sound like he's, and like he starts talking about there's certain percentages of the population that are just useless. And that, I figured, I've seen so many clips of Jordan Peterson. I figured, why don't I watch a couple months ago, I figured, why don't I watch a whole lecture from beginning to end? So I just see the whole thing. I don't just see the clip.
So you're not taking him out of context.
Right, and I will say the YouTube algorithms love him, by the way. You watch one of his videos, and like the next 3 months, he's coming up in your feed.
YouTube algorithms love the far right. I look up videos on communism, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, hey, you want to watch PragerU?"
Right, yeah, you're right.
Like, no, I don't want to.
Part of they're paying for it. PragerU is just blatantly paying. It's paid advertising. But with Peterson, it's not. It's weird. But anyway, so I watched it, and what struck me was, despite the fact that he's kind of a self-help guru, is basically most self-help is positive.
Yeah,
it's you can be better. And it seemed like when I watched this lecture, he was almost giving a list of don'ts rather than a list of do's, right? It was kind of like, there's this kind of mistake. Don't be like this person. Don't be like this person. Don't be like this person. As much as his 12 rules for life, in a way, are a collection of
don'ts,
negativities. And it's kind of like they talk about, I know somebody somewhere did some kind of study that people that are conservative tend to be more easily grossed out and disgusted by things.
Yeah. And
it's kind of like he's showing, you can almost see him showing a collection of, don't be this kind of disease. Don't be that kind of, it's like, and it's almost like, cut out the undesirables. There's an element of appealing to people's desire to be clean and get away from anything they perceive as dirty or defective. And that, again, could be a eugenics mindset. You know what I'm saying?
I think you're entirely right there. It's interesting because you mentioned like how Russia was under all this stress because of the constant attacks from the West. And for those of you who don't know, like, we literally attacked Russia. Like, the Americans and the Japanese and the British literally landed expeditionary forces in Siberia and like tried to invade Russia during the Russian Revolution on behalf of the whites. And that's the Russian crown at the time. So like there's an aspect psychologically that the stress response causes a human being to be more conservative. Yeah. So when people get put in that pressure cooker, a lot of times they will pull to the right. And honestly, to talk to people, or like I think Chapo Trap House referred to them as like fail sons, which is a horrible way to. It's funny, but it's a horrible way to talk about people. Okay, so I actually went through a lot of that issue myself.
Okay.
Right now I am the sole breadwinner for my family. I'm taking care of my wife and my 9-month-old son, and I'm just barely holding things down, but I'm holding them down.
Yeah.
And that took years. Like I said, I'm 35, almost 36. And a lot of people, like, if they're expecting to be running families in their 20s, because, like my mom was, I think, 26 when she had me. Might even have been 24. Previous generations were in very, very different circumstances than we are. And a lot of it was a result of, the FDR's New Deal. It was a result of the World War II mindset. And what a lot of people who want to be conservative, sometimes they think back to the social aspects of like the 1940s and 50s, but they ignore, really the programs that enabled these things to happen. I think in a lot of what I would say to anybody who's like actually struggling, who is that like Jordan Peterson person who feels like they really need to get their stuff together, what I would say is don't be so hard on yourself. Definitely continue to work, but the nuclear family, I was arguing with a fascist about this a while ago. That is not the way humans have traditionally behaved on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. That was an invention of modernity. The idea of mom, dad, 2.5 kids and a dog in their own house with a white picket fence. That is something that was created in like the 1950s. And it's an ideal situation for capital, because banks can sell more homes than they otherwise would sell. People need, instead of like one family all living together, which is really how we did it with an extended family, aunts, uncles, almost clan-based in our own history, they only need one stove. They only need one large home. They only need like one table. But if you break that up and you shame people and you make them feel like, oh, you still live with your parents in their basement, you do this, you do that, suddenly you're out there busting your butt for your boss. And because you're out there so desperate, everybody else is desperate, wages come down. And on top of that, you take on a ton of debt to afford a house that you can't afford. And so, like, really, the nuclear family, the traditional family, one, is not traditional, but two, it is really convenient, not for the people who live it, but specifically for capital. And I really think that people have not heard that and don't quite realize it, because, or at least the fascists I was talking to, like, this guy was literally like, we have been in nuclear families from the beginning of time. And I'm like,
Right.
they call it the nuclear family because of the nuclear age, right?
Right. No, that's a very good point. And that, there's this feeling that the 1950s is somehow the eternal existence of the United States. Talking about the American dream. It's like all throughout American, and the suburbs in the 50s, that was like in terms of just U.S. history, that was like, that was a very short period. And that level of prosperity where the entire world had just been blown up by the Second World War, and we were, selling the world everything and rebuilt that, and that booming economy of the 50s was very much a short-lived thing. Yeah. And that, suburban home with the white picket fence, most of U.S. history, you had lots of starving people. I mean, you had, I remember during the financial crisis when we were getting ready to leave college. I remember one particular, job, how to get a job. We had to sit through a lot of these how to get a job workshops, because the university was really worried about how bad it would look when we all got out and didn't have jobs, Yeah. And so I remember sitting through this how to get a job workshop or whatever. And one of the things they said, I'll never forget this, was they said, find a company that you like, right? Go to this company. Keep living with your parents, keep being supported by your parents. Offer to work for them for free for a year, right? Work there for free for a year. And after you've been there for a year and they see how well you are, then approach them about maybe paying you. And it's like you hear this and it's just like you think, I like William Z. Foster, I like Big Bill Haywood and all that. What would they say? If you said to them, the mines now, you're going to have to work for free in the coal mine, what I mean?
For a year.
There would have been strikes and, there was an element, and it's funny because...
They were better organized back then.
Well, right, and there's this way of invoking the greatest generation and all that, like they were all just a bunch of conservatives, but those people were tough.
Yeah,
they were class struggle. You know what I mean? Like if in
original Antifa.
Yeah. I mean, in the 1930s, if you had said that, William Z. Foster and the CIO and all of them, they would have, there would have been strikes all over the country, and there would have been hell to pay if any company ever even proposed the idea of people working for free. You know what I mean? And people think unions have gone too far. Well, if any boss is telling people, oh, just work for free, that was particularly bad.